Listen, family, because what I am about to walk you through is the loudest, ugliest, most nuclear-grade celebrity exposure that has ever detonated across the internet in the entire modern history of hip-hop, and you are watching it happen live, in real time, on this channel first, no filter, no delay, no sugar. 50 Cent didn't post a diss track. He didn't post a shady meme. Curtis Jackson walked up to Rick Ross's entire life, dumped gasoline on the promised land, lit a match with one hand, and then bought the fire insurance policy with the other hand the day before he struck the flame. If your jaw isn't already on the floor, hold on tight, because by the time we finish this breakdown, you are going to be sitting in your seat wondering how in the actual world William Leonard Roberts II convinced the entire planet for 15 full years that he owned a $100 million Georgia empire that, as of last night, appears to have been a luxury short-term rental the entire time. And I mean the whole time. Watch this closely, because the receipts on the table right now are worse than anything Rick Ross's worst enemies ever dreamed of putting in a courtroom exhibit binder, and I promise you every single detail lands harder than the last. For nearly 2 decades, Rick Ross built a persona bigger than the music itself. Bigger than the deep voice ad-libs. Bigger than the cigar. Bigger than the beard. Bigger than the Wingstop bag. The boss. The biggest boss. The man who sat on every major podcast on the planet and told every young rapper who would listen that he had crossed over from artist to institution because he owned 109 rooms and 235 acres of land in Fayetteville, Georgia. He named that estate the Promised Land. He filmed music videos on that lawn. He hosted his annual multi-million-dollar car show on that driveway. He sat on that balcony with a cigar, looked straight into the lens, and told the world, and I am quoting him almost word for word from 3 different interviews, how can a fake dude own all of this? The mansion wasn't just a house. It was Rick Ross's argument. It was Rick Ross's proof of life. It was the one physical artifact that even Ross's loudest critics couldn't punch a hole through with a public records request. Until last night, when 50 Cent pulled the pin out of the grenade he had apparently been holding for 8 straight months. Now catch this, because the timing is more important than most people realize. At exactly 11:14 p.m. Eastern last night, 50 Cent uploaded a stack of multi-page PDFs straight to Instagram and X, with a caption so cold it should be studied in law schools. The caption read, and I am quoting it exactly as it appeared on screen, "The boss? Nah. The tenant. Pack your bags, Ricky. Checkout is at 11 a.m. No song. No skit. No shady clown emoji. Just paperwork. Peep the receipts. Because the documents 50 uploaded weren't blog screenshots. They weren't Reddit rumors. They weren't grainy cell phone photos. They were stamped, certified, county-indexed public filings pulled from the Fayette County Tax Assessor's office, sitting alongside an active corporate portfolio dossier from a private luxury property management firm called Aura Preferred Estates, a boutique operator that specializes in trophy rentals for major film studios, private equity retreats, and ultra-net-worth clients paying north of $35,000 a night for weekend occupancy of the most exclusive compounds in the American South. And here is the part that broke the internet in half. According to those filings, Rick Ross does not hold the title to a single square inch of the Promised Land. Not the driveway. Not the balcony. Not the horse stables. Not the helipad. Not the little bench where he lights the cigar. Not the acreage. Not the 4-car garage he loves to film in. Not the swimming pool. Not the fountain. Not the private lake. Nothing. The actual title holder is an offshore shell corporation registered in Delaware under the name Promised Land Global Holdings Limited, which is majority owned by a private equity real estate fund headquartered in Dubai. The paperwork traces a quiet corporate buyout deed that was executed in the middle of 2023, when mounting maintenance obligations and undisclosed institutional debt reportedly forced a restructuring transaction that transferred the deed out of Rick Ross's personal control and into a corporate vehicle registered on the other side of the planet. And under the master lease agreement 50 Cent published to his own timeline, that estate has been listed on an invitation-only luxury booking portal, sitting at $35,000 a night, with tiered occupancy rules that allow the master tenant, William Leonard Roberts II, to occupy a designated wing on designated dates provided he vacates when higher-paying corporate clients book the entire compound. Read that again slowly. Rick Ross has been paying to sleep in his own Promised Land. And apparently, according to the paperwork on page 14 of the county filing, he has been running months behind on the rent. Now, before we get to the second twist, and I promise you there is a much, much bigger one coming, let's rewind, because this is not a random beef. This is a 15-year psychological blood feud, and if you don't understand the history, you cannot feel the true size of what just happened. Rewind all the way to 2008. The BET Hip Hop Awards. A hallway backstage. Rick Ross is a rising Miami boss on the strength of the smash single Hustlin'. 50 Cent is a global titan operating at the absolute peak of Get Rich or Die Tryin', G-Unit, Vitamin Water, The Reebok Deal, and about a dozen other multi-million-dollar streams. In that hallway, according to every version of the story that has been retold in every interview since, 50 Cent walked past Rick Ross like Rick Ross wasn't even in the room. Rick Ross took it as a mortal insult. Ross went straight into the booth and answered on wax with mafia music, aiming shots directly at 50's family, his mother, and his personal life. And that decision, family, is the single moment that seems to have set the past 15 years of Rick Ross's career on a slow, unstoppable collision course with the exposure we are all watching unfold in real time tonight. Because 50 Cent didn't respond with a song. 50 Cent opened a file. Within weeks of the mafia music drop, Curtis Jackson had produced official Florida Department of Corrections employment records showing that before there was the Boz, before there was Maybach music, before there was the dark sunglasses and the beard and the cinematic deep voice, William Roberts had worked as a licensed correctional officer at a state prison. Officer Ricky. The nickname stuck to Rick Ross like tar to a shoe. 50 Cent built an entire public campaign around it. Photos in uniform. Radio breakdowns. Interviews. Cartoons. Skits. The whole argument was that Rick Ross's cinematic street persona was a piece of theater built on top of a state paycheck. And still, unbelievably, Rick Ross survived. He didn't run from the story. He didn't disappear. He doubled down. He pivoted from street mythology to corporate hardware. He bought Wingstop franchises. He launched Luc Belaire Champagne. He built Maybach Music Group into a hit factory with Meek Mill, Whale, Rocky Fresh, and a full label ecosystem. And he made the single acquisition that would become the psychological centerpiece of his defense for the next full decade, buying Evander Holyfield's old Georgia estate and rebranding it the Promised Land. Every single time 50 Cent came at him after that, Rick Ross would answer without saying a single word. Ross would walk out to the balcony. Cigar. Sunday. 235 acres in the frame. The message was always the same. A fake man can't own real land. And the culture accepted it. For 15 full years, the culture accepted that argument. 50 Cent was the master troll. Rick Ross was the untouchable landlord. The Promised Land was the one piece of armor that 50 Cent could never crack open. Until, apparently, 50 stopped trying to crack it, walked around it, and quietly bought the entire estate out from underneath it while Ross was busy filming Instagram stories in the driveway. So then, going back to last night, when those PDFs hit the timeline, the platforms lit up in a way I have not personally seen since the peak of the Diddy filings last year. Within minutes, hashtags like #FakeBoss, #PromisedLand Airbnb, and #50ExposedRoss were trending #1 worldwide. Screenshots of the filings multiplied faster than anyone could archive them. Real estate attorneys on X started walking their followers through the filings page by page in live threads. Bloggers were downloading the tax assessor documents and zooming in on the corporate name blocks. And that is when independent financial analysts flagged something on page 14 of the county filing that turned a public embarrassment into a full-blown financial crime whisper. The master lease entity had filed an internal corporate dispute against Roberts in early 2026 alleging over $1.4 million in unpaid operational lease fees, unauthorized subleasing, and illegal commercial exploitation of the estate grounds. Which is a very long, very cold, very legal way of saying two very simple things. Number 1, the biggest boss in hip-hop has allegedly been renting his own legend. Number 2, he is allegedly months behind on the bill. Then came the sound. Because if 50 Cent had stopped at the paperwork, that alone would have been a top 5 internet moment of the entire decade. But Curtis Jackson does not do half measures. At exactly 3:30 a.m. Eastern, Part 2 dropped. And this one wasn't a PDF. It was a 9-minute unedited audio recording of what appears to be a senior vice president at a major global brand sponsorship firm calmly explaining to Rick Ross's business manager exactly why a multi-million-dollar endorsement deal tied to Ross's upcoming album cycle and festival tour had been abruptly frozen. On the recording, the executive doesn't yell. He doesn't gloat. He doesn't cuss. He just states the facts in the flat, expensive tone that only real corporate money uses when it is quietly closing a door. He says the forensic asset audit on the Fayetteville property flagged the deed. The title is registered to a Dubai Holdings Group. Roberts does not have the standalone legal authority to sign off on commercial filming and event rights on the main compound without written consent from the primary landlord. Their underwriters pulled the $4 million advance. And then you hear it. A silence on the other end of the phone line so heavy it sounds like the inside of a tomb, followed by Rick Ross's business manager, voice cracking, begging the executive not to leak anything to the press. Which is, of course, exactly what appears to have happened anyway. The music industry, for a solid 6 hours, went into an unofficial state of emergency. Major entertainment outlets scrambled to verify the filings. Financial commentators on live cable broadcasts started walking through what this exposure could mean for Rick Ross's Wingstop equity, his Bel Air stake, his broader real estate portfolio, and his stake in the Maybach music catalog. The question they kept asking on the record was blunt. If the crown jewel is not owned by the boss, what else in the empire is quietly leveraged against corporate debt the public has never seen a single page of? Wall Street watchers began pricing celebrity endorsement risk out loud, on air, in real time. Because the modern endorsement economy is not built on vibes. It is built on verified net worth, asset-backed credibility, and clean title. And clean title, family, is the one thing the paperwork now suggests Rick Ross has not held for a very long time. Which brings us to the celebrity chorus, because it hit the timeline within the hour and it hit hard. Meek Mill posted a string of cryptic, panicked, spelling error-heavy tweets and then quietly deleted them, but not before the screenshots hit the archive on 10 different accounts. Something about the industry not being what it looks like. Something about trusting nobody. Something about how loyalty in this game is a receipt you can never actually cash. Then Drake, whose own long-simmering static with Rick Ross has been an open secret for months across a dozen sub-tweets and a handful of Instagram Live moments, slid directly into 50 Cent's comment section with a one-liner that racked up hundreds of thousands of likes before sunrise. Drake wrote something to the effect of, "Told y'all he was flying economy for a reason. Check out his 11 a.m., buddy. Don't forget the luggage." And that was that. DJ Academics went live for hours on end, holding his phone up to the camera, walking Fayette County records line by line, yelling into his mic that 50 Cent hadn't just exposed a lie, 50 Cent had called the landlord on him. The line that broke everybody's brain that night was Academics screaming, "The biggest boss is a squatter." The clips are still circulating right now. The clips will circulate for years. Charlemagne the God on The Breakfast Club opened his mic the next morning, leaned into it, and said if you build your entire brand identity on being the richest, biggest, most untouchable mogul in the culture, you cannot afford to get caught with your compound listed on a private booking portal for $38,000 a night. Angie Yee sat next to him and just laughed for 30 straight seconds. Rick Ross's legal team broke silence at 6 a.m. Eastern with a formal press release threatening a $100 million defamation and privacy infringement action against 50 Cent and G-Unit Entertainment. The statement argued that the documents were grossly mischaracterized corporate restructuring papers deployed with malicious intent ahead of Ross's upcoming business ventures. It was a well-drafted statement. It was a strong statement. It was written by expensive lawyers. And it lasted approximately 20 minutes on the internet. Because at that exact moment, 50 Cent posted a video from the back of a black car, holding an iced coffee, laughing directly into the camera, and delivering a line that will live in internet history for the rest of the decade. He said, and I am paraphrasing him tight because the audio is still being clipped, "Sue me for what, Ricky? Public land records are public land records. The county clerk put your rent receipts on the internet, not me. And by the way, I just spoke to the asset managers in Dubai. G-Unit Capital just tabled a formal cash offer on the master deed. I'm your new landlord. Rent is due on the 1st of the month." And that, family, is when the ground actually opened up. Because the internet spent the next few hours debating whether 50 Cent was bluffing about that acquisition offer. Whether the paperwork he flashed on screen was real. Whether the corporate stamp of intent filed with the Georgia Secretary of State's business registry was authentic. And within hours, that stamp checked out. The filing was real. The intent letter existed on the electronic docket. Which meant 50 Cent wasn't just publicly humiliating his oldest rival, he had structured, filed, and paperworked a transaction that could functionally make him the landlord of Rick Ross's entire legend. Not the metaphor of it. Not the joke of it. The actual legal landlord of the estate that built the myth. Now catch this next part, because this is where the story stopped being a beef and started becoming the case study every business school in America is going to teach for the next 20 years. At 9 p.m. Eastern, an emergency legal filing hit the Northern District of Georgia. A court-appointed receiver representing the primary equity holders of Promised Land Global Holdings Limited had submitted paperwork disclosing something the internet had completely missed in its first pass through the documents. The Delaware shell company that holds the master title isn't just controlled by an offshore fund in Dubai. The primary managing director and 51% majority shareholder of that Dubai entity, the same one that quietly bought out the underlying mortgage notes during a silent restructuring in late 2024, is a corporate holding firm registered under the name G-Unit Holdings International LLC. Read that again slowly, because this is not a rumor. This is not a meme. This is not a shady blog. According to the court paperwork that hit the docket last night, 50 Cent has secretly, quietly, personally owned the primary equity stake in the deed to the Promised Land for over 8 straight months. And nobody, including apparently Rick Ross himself, had any idea. Which means the offer wasn't an offer. The exposure wasn't spontaneous. The receipts weren't leaked by accident. 50 Cent didn't stumble into any of this. He engineered it from the ground floor up. He apparently signed the corporate architecture that turned Rick Ross into a tenant, watched Rick Ross flex on the internet for 8 full months about a house 50 Cent himself was silently sitting underneath as the true controlling party, and waited for the precise cultural moment when the payload would do maximum damage to Rick Ross's brand, endorsements, credibility, and public identity. That is not a rap beef. That is a hostile long-form campaign of psychological, financial, and reputational warfare, executed with the discipline of a private equity firm and the theatricality of a Netflix limited series. Every business insider I have talked to since sunrise this morning has said essentially the same 3 words to me in different orders. Never seen this. Never seen this. Never seen this. And on page 32 of that unsealed filing sits the part that turned this from a spectacle into an actual crisis for William Leonard Roberts II personally. The receiver, acting on behalf of the equity holders, has issued a formal 14-day notice to vacate. The notice cites severe breaches of the Commercial Master Occupancy Agreement, unauthorized structural alterations to the estate grounds, and lease arrears totaling over $1.4 million. If Rick Ross does not either vacate the Promised Land or clear the corporate judgment in full by 5 p.m. Eastern on August 22, 2026, the paperwork legally authorizes local sheriffs and Fayette County law enforcement to enter the premises, padlock the main gate, and physically remove personal property from the compound. The biggest boss in hip-hop history is now, on paper, in the docket, in the county record, facing court-ordered eviction from the estate that made him. And the eviction paperwork was filed on behalf of an ownership structure that his oldest enemy, on paper, controls the majority of. When the notice hit, Rick Ross's social media accounts, and I mean every single one of them, went dark within minutes. No poolside videos. No cigar shots. No horse footage. No Wingstop restocks. No Bel Air cases. No wrist. No cars. No lion. No tigers. No fleet. No fountain. Nothing. Rick Ross, the man whose entire brand is built on the choreographed, continuous, minute-by-minute performance of visible wealth, went completely silent for the first time in what feels like a full decade. And in a career built on volume, family, that silence right now is the loudest post Rick Ross has ever made in his entire career. It is echoing across every group chat, every industry lunch, every A&R meeting, every studio session. The absence of Rick Ross's phone is telling the story better than any statement his legal team could ever draft. So then, where does this leave the empire? Because it is not just about the house. Maybach Music Group has active corporate sponsor meetings scheduled that were reportedly gated on venue ownership documentation Rick Ross now cannot produce. Sources close to the label say 2 global lifestyle brands and 1 major beverage company have already paused their MMG-affiliated ad flights, pending clarification of the corporate structure. The annual car show, historically hosted on the compound and functioning as one of MMG's largest branded activations of the calendar year, is now legally uncertain, because the master tenant does not currently hold clean rights to authorize commercial filming or event access on the main grounds. A well-connected industry insider, speaking on background to a major trade outlet, put it as bluntly as it can be put. The problem isn't the roast. The problem is the paperwork. And the paperwork does not care about your persona. Sweetheart, that lie ain't lied anywhere it can hide. Because when you build 15 years of legacy on ownership, and ownership turns out to be occupancy, every single downstream deal is contaminated. Endorsements built on asset-backed credibility have to be re-underwritten from scratch. Investors who were told they were plugging into a $100 million landholder have to reopen their due diligence. Every rapper who ever cited Rick Ross's Wingstop empire as an aspirational blueprint is now quietly rechecking their own corporate filings before somebody else does it for them. Every podcast interview where Rick Ross lectured young entrepreneurs on assets over liabilities is being clipped, timestamped, and re-uploaded with side-by-side captions that read, quote, "Narrator explains what a commercial lease is." The mockery is not the point. The mockery is the delivery mechanism. The point is that the culture just watched a corporate takeover disguised as a diss track. And the culture is not going to forget how clean the execution was. And here is the part that nobody in Rick Ross's camp knows how to answer publicly yet, because the exposure isn't just a Ross problem. Insiders are whispering that the leaked audio 50 Cent has been holding back involves at least 3 other major hip-hop names who allegedly held quiet financial stakes in similar corporate leasing structures across the American South, the Miami waterfront, and the New Jersey Mansion Belt. Which is why, in the last 12 hours, according to multiple independent sources, 3 MMG-affiliated executives and at least 2 prominent artists outside of MMG have quietly retained real estate counsel to audit their own asset filings before 50's next drop lands. Because nobody, and I mean nobody, in the industry knows exactly how much paperwork 50 Cent has been sitting on, exactly how long he has been sitting on it, or exactly whose names are on the next page. Group chats across the label ecosystem are apparently unusable right now. A prominent A&R told a friend of mine this morning that the phones haven't stopped vibrating since sunrise, and that half the messages coming in are entertainment lawyers asking clients to book same-day check-ins. One veteran manager reportedly told his roster to freeze every Instagram post about property, cars, and jewelry until further notice, because he does not want anybody accidentally waving a red flag in front of the same forensic accountants who just walked through Rick Ross's balcony footage frame by frame. Another executive is said to have cancelled a scheduled magazine cover shoot at his own private residence because the paperwork on the residence, in his own words, was, quote, complicated. That is how deep the paranoia goes tonight. That is how far the ripple has spread inside 12 hours. And this is only the first wave. Between us, this is exactly why every rapper who ever mocked 50 Cent's bankruptcy from 2015 is suddenly very quiet online today. Because that bankruptcy filing, which the entire culture spent a decade dragging him for, was a legal reorganization, not a lifestyle collapse. And while the entire culture was busy laughing at that filing, 50 Cent was apparently reallocating capital into structured real estate positions that were, in his own words on more than one podcast episode, boring on purpose. Boring by design. Boring because boring is what wins. Boring because boring doesn't post about itself on Instagram. Boring because boring doesn't need to prove anything to a comment section. And nobody, absolutely nobody, is laughing at boring anymore. Because boring just filed an eviction notice on the loudest man in the culture, and boring's name is on the deed. Boring bought the mortgage while everybody was busy watching the music video. Boring notarized the transfer while everybody was busy watching the car show. Boring waited 8 months for the calendar to hit its worst possible date on Rick Ross's business schedule, and then Boring pressed the upload button. That is the whole game now. That is the entire new template for how power moves inside this culture. And every mogul in the top tier is quietly running the same audit tonight, because nobody wants to be the second name on the next receipt. Real talk, this changes the game for every single celebrity brand built on visible flex. Because for 15 years, hip-hop's dominant valuation model has been the appearance of wealth. Cars in the driveway. Chains on camera. Mansions in the music video. Watches on the wrist. And what 50 Cent just proved, in one single upload, is that the appearance of wealth is now legally, publicly, and permanently pierceable. If a county clerk can generate a document that names the true owner of a property, and that document can be pulled by any investigator with a laptop and a subpoena number, then every asset a celebrity has ever bragged about is one filing request away from being audited by the internet. The game just changed overnight. And most artists in the top tier of the culture haven't even fully absorbed what happened yet. The ones who have absorbed it are already on the phone with their attorneys, their accountants, and their asset managers, moving pieces around a board they didn't realize was being watched. And the ones who are still posting today like nothing has changed, family, those are the ones who are about to become the sequel. Because 50 Cent didn't just expose Rick Ross. 50 Cent gave every rival in the culture permission to open a folder. He normalized paperwork as a weapon. He turned the county clerk into a producer credit. And that permission structure, once released into the ecosystem, does not go back into the bottle. It just keeps making noise, deal after deal, mansion after mansion, receipt after receipt. Now catch this final layer, because this is where the story quietly gets darker. The court filings that dropped tonight include a supplemental schedule listing the names of the corporate officers who signed the master occupancy agreement on Rick Ross's behalf back in 2023. Two of those names are individuals who were, at the time, listed on MMG's payroll as senior business affairs personnel. One of those names, according to a public LinkedIn profile that was scrubbed within an hour of the filings going live, previously worked for a boutique tax advisory firm with corporate footprints in both Dubai and Delaware. Which means either Rick Ross knew exactly what he was signing when he signed those documents in 2023, or the people around him structured the deal in a way that left him personally exposed while shielding the corporate profits from any downside. Either interpretation is catastrophic. Either interpretation ends careers inside MMG's inner circle. And in the next 24 hours, once forensic accountants get their hands on the schedule, we are going to find out which interpretation is the true one. The Atlanta courthouse has an emergency injunction hearing scheduled for first thing tomorrow morning, where Rick Ross's legal team will make what several attorneys are already characterizing as an aggressive last-ditch play to freeze the eviction order and stall 50 Cent's corporate enforcement actions. Multiple courtroom analysts believe the injunction has less than a 20% chance of surviving a full evidentiary review, because the deed transfer paperwork appears to be legally clean, notarized, and internationally executed. Meanwhile, sources close to G-Unit's legal group say Curtis Jackson is holding a third payload of unreleased documents and audio that is expected to detonate if Rick Ross's team escalates the litigation instead of settling privately. Which means we are, right now, watching what may be the single most sophisticated public exposure event in the history of hip-hop unfold across 3 concurrent theaters at the exact same time. A court docket. A social feed. And a corporate boardroom. And the man running the operation isn't standing in any of those 3 rooms tonight. He is sitting in the back of a car, laughing, holding an iced coffee, and telling you exactly what time checkout is on his own schedule. I want to give you one more layer, because it is the layer that most breakdowns are missing tonight. When you go back through 50 Cent's public statements over the last 18 months, you find something eerie. On multiple podcasts, in multiple interviews, in multiple Instagram captions, 50 was quietly telegraphing this. He said, on Patrick Bet-David, in one of his most watched podcast appearances, the way you beat a loud man is you get quiet. He said, on another sit-down, I don't have to say anything about Rick Ross. His life will do the talking. He said, in a caption 3 months ago that got about 80,000 likes and then vanished into the algorithm, everybody watching the front door. Nobody watching the deed. Everybody thought those were throwaway bars. In hindsight, family, those were public confessions. He was telling us exactly what he was doing while he was doing it. And nobody in the culture was reading closely enough to catch it. Which is why, honestly, this exposure lands so hard. Because it isn't just financial. It is philosophical. 50 Cent didn't just beat Rick Ross. 50 Cent redefined how you beat somebody in the modern culture. You don't out-rap them. You don't out-fashion them. You don't out-diss them. You out-paper them. You out-file them. You out-corporate them. You out-patient them. And you do it silently, for years, until the moment you decide to open the folder in public. This is a template. Watch what happens over the next 12 months. Watch how many other artists suddenly reveal that they, quote, always had a piece of somebody else's business behind the scenes. Watch how many quiet acquisitions become loud reveals. Watch how many social media captions suddenly start hinting at deed transfers and equity holdings. 50 Cent didn't just embarrass Rick Ross. He handed every artist in the culture a new weapon. And the smart ones are already reading the instruction manual tonight. So let me ask you what you really feel about all of this, because the temperature outside is 110 degrees on the internet right now and I want every single voice below in the comments section. Do you honestly think Rick Ross's public legacy can survive an exposure of this scale, or has 50 Cent officially and permanently ended the biggest boss persona in one single weaponized upload cycle? Do you personally view what 50 Cent did as pure long-form comedic genius, the highest form of chess ever played inside a rap beef in the entire history of the genre, or do you think 50 crossed a moral line by weaponizing corporate ownership against another black-owned brand? Do you think Meek Mill's cryptic deleted tweets were about the deed, or about something we haven't even seen yet? Do you think Drake's checkout time comment was the funniest line of the year, or was it a signal that a much bigger alliance is quietly forming behind the scenes ahead of a bigger reveal? Do you think Rick Ross's inner circle knew about the deed transfer in 2023 and let him flex anyway, or was Ross himself blindsided by his own team? And most importantly, if 50 Cent really is holding a third drop right now, whose name do you think is on the next page? Because I personally already have 3 theories, and I am not saying any of them out loud until I see your theories first. Drop your take below in the comments. I am reading every single word tonight. I am replying to the wildest ones live in the comment section until my thumbs cramp. And I am pinning the sharpest, most out-of-pocket, most correctly wild theory to the top of the thread tomorrow morning. If your brain is currently melting halfway out of your skull, hit that like button right now, because that single click is what tells the algorithm to push this update to every single hip-hop fan on the planet who has not seen the receipts yet. If you are new here, welcome to the realist breakdown room on the platform. This is where the culture gets covered without the corporate filter and without the label politics. Hit subscribe. Hit the bell. Turn every notification on. Because tomorrow morning's injunction hearing, the third audio drop from Curtis Jackson's folder, and the next master deed filing update are all landing on this channel first, unfiltered, receipts attached, no fluff, no filler, no delay. We have eyes on the Atlanta courthouse. We have sources reading the docket in real time. We have contacts inside 2 of the affected sponsor agencies. And the second any of it moves, we are live on this channel with the update within minutes. Because this story is nowhere close to over, family. It might not even be halfway over. The promised land has a new landlord. The biggest boss has a court-ordered checkout time. Meek Mill is still deleting tweets. Drake is still commenting. DJ Academics is still live. Charlemagne is still laughing. Wall Street is still pricing the fallout. And the next page of the paperwork is somewhere in a folder in Curtis Jackson's hand right now, waiting for its exact moment to hit the internet like the sequel nobody in the culture is ready for. That's the whole plate. I'll see you when the next chapter drops. Stay locked. Stay loud. Stay ready. Stay logged in. And don't blink, because in a story moving this fast, one blink is a whole news cycle, and one news cycle in 2026 is a whole career. So keep this tab open. Keep the notifications hot. Keep the group chats warm. Because the second Rick Ross's legal team steps out of that Atlanta courthouse tomorrow morning, the second Curtis Jackson touches his phone, the second the third folder opens, we are live on this channel with the receipts, in your face, unfiltered, before any other outlet in the country. I will talk to you very, very soon. And I mean that. Very, very soon.